We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday, and oftentimes on Saturday, Ed joins us. He joins us today from Tennessee. He's out of uniform. Apparently, it's in the wash,
Yes,
but he looks very nattily attired today. You look like a grandpa, elder statesman, which is
that's
appropriate
that's
given your
that's
age.
that's what I'm going for here. Yeah.
There you
Mhm.
go. You nailed it. You nailed it. We
Mhm.
were talking about something just before we came on, something I haven't even thought about, but it's an interesting perspective. And please tell the folks because I think it's something to be concerned about.
Okay, you remember the Great Recession?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there were a number of factors. For one thing, two wars on a credit card, and also well, there were a number of factors, but the big one was that the finance bros started putting together these subprime mortgages in packets and labeling them as financial instruments that they then sold to the banks, and the rating companies rated them AAA when they were totally worthless. So eventually, everything crashed, and we had to bail out the banks. You remember that? And
Right, right.
it really pissed me off because it wasn't the first time we've had to do that. And at the same time, they actually paid bonuses to people who had made that happen. I mean, it totally insanity. But that's what we had to do. That's what Obama had to do to rescue the country from a recession that was threatening to become something much worse. Okay,
Right.
we got through that, right? And everybody said we'll never let this happen again. And so far that's true. Um, but something is also happening that I was just made aware of. CLOs, they're called, and that it's collateralized something or other. It's the same basic thing that the banks did, or rather, that was sold to the banks. These packages of bad debt is what it comes down to. Subprime mortgages gathered together, made into a financial instrument, rated AAA, and sold to the banks. Right?
Right.
Well,
Right.
now you've heard of private equity firms. These are the real bad guys. If you like Joanne Fabrics, if you liked any
Thank you
number of
so
Sears,
Thank you.
me,
Hooters.
Hooters, I've never been in a Hooters. My wife would kill me. But at any rate, if you were a Hooters fan, if you liked their wings or whatever, and or if you like Joanne Fabrics, what these private equity firms do is they buy up these profitable businesses, and then they suck all the profit out of them and leave them like a dried up husk. How do they buy them? They get loans from banks, and the loans they get are variable rate loans, which nobody really wants, right? But now these private equity people are putting these together again as a financial instrument, the CLOs, but they learned that people are watching the banks, right? So
Right.
now they're selling them to the big pension funds. Now you got to ask yourself, who is rating these things and why are the pension funds so stupid as to buy these things? Well, because they can make a lot of money on them too. When they buy them from the uh, uh, the private equity firms, it looks like a good deal. And supposedly they're rated well and whatever. And maybe the people at the pension funds aren't as sophisticated along these lines. I don't know why they would. Maybe it's all tied together. Maybe it's just a bunch of people who are looking to suck more money out of the lower and middle classes and give it to the rich people, which is probably the case. But
Yeah, most
anyway,
definitely.
it's happening. Now, if you have a pension, I suggest you call your pension fund, get a hold of them, and ask them if they are buying CLOs that are put together by private equity firms, and if so, you demand that they divest it. I mean, if you get enough people speaking to these pension funds, I think they'd have to respond. So check out your pension fund if you get a pension, if you're going to get a pension, if you're hoping to get a pension, find out if they're buying these things, because what I'm afraid of is that when push comes to shove, when these fail, then the country is going to be faced with the option of bailing out these pension funds or not. Now, if Trump is still president, I guarantee you it will be not, because they just as soon get rid of pensions. They just as soon get rid of Social Security and anything else that supports people like you and me, our age. I'm a little bit older than you, but that so that we have to keep working forever at whatever they want to pay us. That's the goal. Remember that. Restore the Gilded Age. They're not talking about the golden age, is what Trump keeps saying. We're going to have a new golden age. What he really wants is a new gilded age where there are very few oligarchs at the top with all the money, and everybody else has to work their 70-hour, 90-hour weeks for a pittance. That's what they want. And this is just another step down that path. So call your pension fund, find out if they're investing in CLOs that are tied to these faulty bank loans that are supporting the private equity companies. Find that out.
Yeah, it's funny that Elon Musk would suggest that Social Security was a Ponzi scheme, but what you described sounds like an actual Ponzi scheme. Get it's about greed and it's grift and it's about getting it done quickly, and then somebody always loses in the end. So what
Yeah,
you're talking about, what the recession, the Great Recession, with the subprime mortgages, and now what you're talking about here is absolutely a fucking Ponzi scheme, and it's being
exactly.
endorsed by our government.
Exactly. Somebody is rating these things that we know are in the same line as the subprime mortgages. It's a CLO. It is not worth what it's it's an instrument. Private equity is destroying profitable businesses, which are destroying jobs, which are destroying communities, and so forth. And now they've added this extra, just awful dimension to it, where they are buying up these variable rate loans from the banks that issued them, or gave the money to the private equity firms to buy these businesses and destroy them. So it's a double hit, sometimes a triple hit against people. I just saw a story, and this really gets to me. I just saw a story this morning on the Today Show, I think it was, or one of the morning shows, saying that okay, the legacy businesses like the Gap are back, and they're really hitting it, folks, and so forth. But they don't tell you. I'd like to know who owns Macy's. I could look it up. I haven't yet had a chance this morning. Macy's was one they mentioned, the Gap, and some others. But we know that Forever 21 just bid it, and I'm betting there's a private equity or a hedge fund behind that as well. When you see these legacy businesses that have been around in brick and mortar malls forever suddenly start failing, when individual businesses, restaurants or Joanne Fabrics or whatever, when they start failing, even though the individual stores are profitable, there's a hedge fund behind it. They're sucking the life out, and eventually there'll be an empty storefront.
It's interesting. We hear people talk about private equity firms,
Yeah.
and then we hear about private equity buying up homes,
Yep.
raise rents. We hear about private equity buying up farms to
Yep.
raise grocery prices, and now we're hearing about them uh, buying stores and businesses and such. They seem like a scourge on society. And I don't know that most people understand what a private equity firm is. I don't know that I do. Do you have a explanation of what they are actually?
Well, in simplest terms, it's an investor group with somebody at either a group or one person at the top making these investments. It's a pool of money. It's a huge pool of money. A number of investors involved, and it's invited investors. I just can't go and become and buy into one. I have to be. I believe that they go after people with a lot of money. So you put this together. The little Weasley guy who's always doing um, financial advice. He's bald, he's short, he's really animated and so forth.
Yeah.
He used to run a hedge fund. And he was quoted widely saying, "Yeah, when you have that much money, you could make the market do tricks."
Yeah.
And this is absolutely true. We talk about a free market, but we're so far from that it's ridiculous. And that's why when I see deregulation as the watchword of an administration, which it always is with Republicans, that tells me there is skullduggery afoot that they want to be able to hide. That's what deregulation means, period. It's not restrictions on business that are onerous, it's restrictions on business that protect us. That's what deregulation is. I mean, that's what regulation is. Deregulation, of course, just, we're all in the Old West then, and you better pack a pistol because you don't know who's hiding behind the next tree or rock, right?
Yeah.
Financially. For me, ever since Reagan, we've seen the American financial system go crazy. They offshored all the manufacturing. And they talk about bringing back manufacturing. They don't want that. There's no money to be made that way. It takes too long. It takes too much investment. It takes too much um, uh, uh, taking care. You have to watch the market. You have to appeal to people. You have to make things that they want to buy and so forth. How much easier is it to just have money that you can move around and do miracles with, influence the market because you've got so much? And that's what's happening. That's what the Gilded Age was. It was a few people with a lot of money. We're right back there. And the only way to deal with that is to break them up, put taxes on them so much. It's a carrot and stick approach, and it works so well during the best time for the middle class and below here in this country. You put a 70% tax rate on them, and then you say, but if you invest that in a factory or do this, then that drops down to a 30% rate. That's the way you do this. That's the way everybody wins. But the Republican Party in particular was seduced into being just a front for the oligarchs. That's all they are. That's all they'll ever be. And this is just another example of that. We almost got them. We almost got them during Biden's during the first year. We had legislation that would have severely restricted private equity and hedge funds, that would have made them disperse that money and so forth and behave in a responsible manner. But no, we had two Democrats, Sinema and Manchin, who voted with the Republicans, so that legislation was not enacted. And that's why we need to get the power back, and we need to never let a Republican lead. We could never again have a Republican Congress or a Republican president, and certainly not both together. And we need to do something about the Supreme Court. That's the only way we will ever be sane again. We need sane people in charge, not greedy bastards.
When you talk about deregulation, the whole thing about hedge funds or private equity, the way they do business sounds a lot like organized crime.
It
It's the
is.
same kind of, it's the same situation.
That's where they take their cue from. They are organized crime always. It's like with Russia. Russia was run by an organized crime group of
Right.
people with Putin at the head, and so are many of the other right wing dictatorships. They are essentially just the mafia with a different hat.
Deregulation reminds me of the trickle down theory.
Yeah.
And here's why. The trickle down theory, in theory, could work. But you have to trust that oligarchs and wealthy people will do the right thing. And it's the same way with deregulation. You could take away regulations if they did the right thing, but you can't trust them to do the right thing. They will do the profitable thing regardless of how it impacts the country or the people in the country. So that's why we need regulations. This is why we need to handle the money and not just give it to rich people and presume they're going to do the right thing, because they fucking don't. And they haven't ever since they had the opportunity to do it. And this is what always troubles me about Republicans. They want deregulation, but all we do is get problems when we deregulate because we can't trust the motherfuckers with the money.
Right. I mean, Trump has already signed some kind of bogus order. I don't know if it'll even make any difference or not to reopen all the coal plants that they closed down. Now, right across the river from where I live here, the electricity generating plant. When I was a kid, they called it the steam plant. What it is, and back then, a train came in with carloads full of coal, and you could anytime, day or night, you could see the clouds coming up into the sky where they were burning the coal to make the power. Right
Right.
now, just not that long ago, they switched to natural gas and which is not ideal, but it's better than coal. I think we'll admit that, right? And they got rid of the coal-fired furnaces and knocked the smokestacks down, and now they just operate on natural gas. So they want to. I don't know. A lot of those were destroyed, so I don't know how you can open something. They can't open this one because it's not there anymore, at least not the capacity to or the ability to use coal. But anything that restricts profit, then they will be against. And this is the problem. When profit is your only guiding line, it's like the old saying goes, when all you got's a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that's exactly what they're doing when profit is the only motive. Think about it. In any business, you have the workers, you have the customers, and you have the investors, right? All of those should benefit equally from any business, or at least, proportionally. Okay, the investors are putting their money in, they should get a reasonable return. The customers should expect that they will be given a product that lasts, does what they're told it will do. So regulatory industries make sure of that. You can't lie and say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread and it will kill you. No, we don't let you do that. At the same time, manufacturing it, if it causes pollution, if it causes waste, if it causes toxic byproducts, we say, yeah, you could make money doing that, but you're killing people by doing that. So, no, you can't. Either find a way to
Right.
do it cleanly or don't do it. And then, of course, the workers are the ones who actually make the business work. It's their sweat that puts it together, or whatever it is that they do, whether it's a service that they provide or if it's something they make. The workers are heavily involved with it, and they need to be compensated in a way that allows them to thrive and survive, if you will. If you look at it from that perspective, then it's a good business. If it falls down in any way, then it's not a good business, and it has to be regulated to make it fall in line. It's that simple.
When Luigi shot and killed that United Health uh, CEO,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people thought that put CEOs and wealthy people on notice, and maybe it did. But I think there's something more important going on, and I'm hoping they're paying attention to it. We've been seeing what's happening to Tesla. People are
Hmm.
angry about Tesla. They're burning Teslas. They're firebombing dealerships and charging stations. They're vandalizing stuff. There's probably all kinds of threats against Elon Musk's life. The thing about it is it's not just Elon. Well, it's because of Elon Musk. They're talking about kicking him out as CEO, and I think it's too late.
Yeah.
He's attached to Tesla. Tesla's cooked. Tesla's done. They're going to go by the wayside eventually here, and a lot of people will lose a lot of money. But I think corporate America needs to look at this. Elon Musk has become the villain, and we as a people are destroying that country. We will ultimately destroy that country. But here's the thing: once Elon Musk is done and no longer an issue, who's next? Jeff Bezos? Is it Mark Zuckerberg? Who is it? Because once the corporations understand what the people can do, and once the people understand what they can do, this is going to be an interesting run. These people are going to have to toe the line, and this is where people become the power in this country. We have to recognize it as the people to see what's going on here, continue it until it's done. But these corporations need to recognize, fuck around and find out.
Right. And it's dangerous for all of us because if you reach that tipping point, if you become Russia in 1919 or if you become France in 17, whatever, when you have those revolutions, and the danger there is the hoi polloi, the MAGA crowd, if you will. Once
Yeah.
they realize that they have been duped, once their fire is up, there's no stopping them. Um, if you look at the history of the French Revolution, for example, when they started chopping off heads, they liked it so much no authority could get them to stop. They even made
Yeah.
Napoleon emperor to try because they figured as popular as he was and being a general and all of that, maybe he could do it. He couldn't do it either. It eventually petered out. And gradually, France came back to be what it is today, right? Uh, uh, Probably better than it was before, but it took a hell of a long time to get there, and there was lots of really bad things going on for a long time.
Right.
Hopefully, we head that off here. Um, I think I've heard it. Warren Buffett has expressed this, and so has a few of the other big money guys, the ones with sense, saying, we've got to start sharing, or it's gonna end us. And that they may think I can build my lair on Hawaii or wherever they're building their latest one all around the world and so forth. But ultimately, there is no escape. I mean, maybe Elon thinks he can fly off to Mars or something, but that ain't happening. They're stuck here with us. And ultimately, there is no stopping the people when they really get fired up. We've seen it. We've seen it all around the world. We've seen it in other countries. And fortunately, the people who put this country together, although imperfect, they realized that you could not have this huge or actually small group of people who got all the money and everything. You had to spread it out. You had to give some sort of way for people to move forward. That stopped with Ronald Reagan, and it started to backward. It started going backward, and we're at that point now. This is the breaking point. If Trump succeeds, then we become some sort of Russia. Okay, we become a kakistocracy, which is rule by the worst, right? And
Yeah.
a criminal element. That's what we become. We become nothing but peons. And that, I don't think the American people will put up with that. There would be a revolution, and then all bets are off. You don't know what you wind up with after that point, but it's usually not good.
What I see now, you expect the Republicans to do the right thing and they haven't. You expect the
Mhm.
Democrats to fight back and they don't. I think we're in a precarious position right now. We're about that far from violence in this country. And I don't say that happily. I'm just saying we're that close. And we're seeing it kind of play out in a smaller version with with Elon Musk and Tesla. People absolutely hate this guy. And it's not just Democrats that hate this guy,
No.
it's Republicans too. Um, the thing about it is there was a telling thing that Elon Musk said, and we should learn a lesson from this. Elon Musk said, I don't understand why they're so violent. I thought the Democrats were supposed to be so kind and forgiving and compassionate. I don't understand why they're doing this. First, that tells me they knew all along that Democrats were easy marks
Mhm.
and they still shoved it down their throat anyway. They took advantage of a fucking weak party. What they didn't account for was, yeah, maybe the politicians are weak and not going to push back and more compassionate. Let's do the right thing. We can do anything we want because they do the right thing and they'll push back on us. But when you start taking away people's lives, literally taking away their lives, their money to live, to survive, take away medical care, take away all this stuff, people in this country aren't so forgiving. And it's not just Democrats. They're finding out now They kept pushing the envelope and pushing the envelope, and now they pushed it too far. And the people in this country are fucking pissed, and they have every right to be pissed. And it's going to get unpleasant. The only thing I can hope for here is the contention I have about all bullies. All
Mhm.
bullies will keep pushing until somebody pushes back. Well, that push is beginning, and it's just beginning. It's going to get worse. Uh, if bullies do what they normally do, they run away and they cower. So hopefully that's how it goes before the violence comes.
I hope you're right. And I did see one glimmer of hope, sort of. And this is, this is a whole different area, but I'm sure you're aware that various government agencies have been purging their websites of any mentions of positive mentions of women and minorities, no matter who it may
Right.
be. The Defense Department, for example, has, purged the Tuskegee Airmen, and they uh, purged Medgar Evers. They purged any number of people, any positive reference to a person of color or a woman, they have been purging and from any website that they have control over. But people noticed that, and now they're starting to restore some of those because just having to maybe try to justify why they would do that. I've never seen them try to justify it. They just don't comment, they just start putting it back. So that's the case. You got to keep shining. It's like when you turn on the kitchen light, the roaches run under the sink, right? This is and that's what we have to keep doing. That's what the press used to do. That was their primary function, was turning on the kitchen light so the roaches ran for it. And that's what we have to get back to right now. CBS, ABC, NBC, I'm calling you out. If there's a protest and you don't show it to us, you're complicit. If you do
I
a
agree.
story about how great these companies, legacy companies, are starting to come back, and you don't tell about private equity buying them up and destroy them, then you are complicit. CBS, ABC, NBC, you are complicit. My God, we're even seeing Fox News holding Trump's feet to the flame now. Not all of them, but it's happening. So, yeah, there's something going on here, but we have to keep shining that light. We have to keep flicking that switch every day to show what they're doing. And that's what you and I are doing. When CBS, ABC, and NBC won't do it, we will. We'll keep turning on that kitchen light. So they keep scrambling and they keep running. And ultimately, we'll bring in a bomb to get rid of them. I mean, like you do with roaches, a roach bomb.
A bug bomb. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I have a question in my mind. Which mainstream media isn't complicit? Uh, I heard about these veteran protests, not only at
Mm-hmm.
the U.S. Capitol, but at all the state capitals. And I was kind of excited to see because I knew veterans were pretty fired up about this and they were pretty upset about this. And I thought, well, there'll be news all over. There'll be a lot of people in Washington, D.C. Didn't hear a fucking thing. Then I talked to Old Soul, who was at the Washington thing, and she said, all I know is I was standing there in the middle of it. When I turned back, I couldn't see the end of it.
Yeah.
There were thousands, tens of thousands of people there, and that doesn't make the news. Now, if
Yeah,
you're,
see, the only reason I knew about it was social media and
yeah,
saw the pictures that people like Old Soul put up that showed how many, many, many people were there. The only thing we can keep doing is a quick story. George Soros, the boogeyman of the right, right? He's awful. He funds all of these liberal things, right? And he does.
he sends me a check every 2 weeks.
Yeah, me
I
too. I
love it.
couldn't get by without it. But what most people don't realize that George Soros started off his political involvement started off with fighting the communist regimes in Eastern Europe, and he did that by sending them mimeograph machines so that they could
Right.
write up things and then distribute them. And now everybody, he was anti-communist. He was for the
God
people,
forbid.
and he still is. They try to say he's some kind of communist or a Nazi or something like that, but no, it's exactly the opposite. Just remember this: if it comes out of a Republican mouth, it's a lie. Okay. Just
Absolutely.
remember
Absolutely.
that. You can always apply that. It's always true. So, yeah. And that's the way we have, that's what we are doing here is the equivalent of a mimeograph machine. We are printing the truth and sending it out. Or we are speaking the truth and sending it out. And that's what
Right.
we have to keep doing. We have to keep telling them that there's these big protests against by veterans against what's happening, and other people too. Teachers are doing it too, and others where the all of these departments that are being purged. And I want to talk a little about Social Security later and what's happening with that. But yeah, it's happening there as well. And that is the strength. We still, at this moment, have the ability to go out into the streets if we need to. Now they're going to try to shut that down. Trump's already talking about it.
Right.
They're talking about illegal protest. Well, who decides what's a legal or illegal protest? I mean, we had illegal protest against the Vietnam War, and we finally shut it down. That's what we're going to have to do. Yes, there will be blood. There always is, just like with civil rights. And it's the innocent who pay the price, but someone is willing to pay that price, and that is the way you win.
Yeah. And I got to give Elon Musk credit. He's the one that's fueling the fire of these
Mm-hmm.
people, not to mention Donald Trump. Donald Trump is too. Um, do you think do you think this we're able to keep this on a momentum forward? I mean, I think that's important. People tend to get bored or distracted. Um, I think at this level, when people are actually being pinched, veterans, for example, um, there's got to be a lot of pressure from veterans. There's a lot of veterans, and a lot of them are upset. They were in the military. They sacrificed time and lives for this country. And as much as the Republicans say they support the veterans, there can't have been a more anti-veteran administration in history.
Oh, every Republican administration has been anti veteran. Every one. They always are trying to, back in, uh, give you a good example. After the First World War, the guys who fought in the First World War were promised a bonus. Well,
Right.
then they said, then the Depression came along and they said, well, we can't pay it now. We're going to make it an insurance policy and we'll pay it off in 30 years, whatever it was, right? Well, this was the Depression and this was the Hoover administration. So a number of veterans, I mean, thousands of them, journeyed all across the country by train, by Shanks Mare, however to get to Washington and protest, give us that money. I mean, it was like 300 and some dollars, but 300 and some dollars in the Depression was a lot of money, right?
Right.
And
Right.
they camped near Washington on these flats down by the river. What was the
Right.
Republican response? They sent in the army with armored vehicles and tear gas and chased them away. Some were killed, some died. And that was the Republican response to those veterans. And every time that there is legislation to help veterans, the Republicans vote it down or don't vote for it. If we have the House and Senate, they will lockstep vote against it. Even, oh, we love our veterans, but no, we can't give any money. Oh, we love our veterans, but no, we're not going to fund health care to take care of the ailments they develop from burn pits or from Agent Orange. No, we can't do that. That costs too
Right.
much. But we love
Right.
our veterans. They love using veterans as cannon fodder. That's it. Once that's done, they have no use for them. They were just as soon they died. Actually, they would prefer it.
Yeah, it would be easier. It would be cheaper. You know, um, we were talking about Elon Musk and how people are turning on Elon Musk and how corporations should consider that. We know what happened just the other day. Donald Trump and Elon Musk fired a bunch of people from the education department. Then there he put out an executive order. Donald Trump did to basically shut it down, which he doesn't have the ability to do because
No.
Congress put it up and they have to take it down if that's what's going to happen. The problem is he can go in there and create the chaos and vandalize it and make it crippled to do the things it's supposed to do. But I was thinking about that. Linda McMahon is all behind what Donald Trump does, right?
Yeah.
Now, Linda McMahon comes from her
Wrestling.
husband wrestling, WWE wrestling.
Hmm.
Who watches WWE wrestling mostly?
Hmm.
Fucking kids.
Yeah.
Kids, the ones that are going to be impacted by this situation. So maybe parents around the country say, no more WWE. We're not going to participate in giving money to people who want to destroy kids' education. That would be the logical
Boycott it.
thing to do. Yeah.
Boycott it. I'm calling for a boycott on WWE right now. Boycott it. I don't watch it anyway. I hate that shit. But boycott it. And I've got to say this too. I think MAGA is really into WWE as well.
Oh yeah, tractor pulls, WWE, anything that they think is cool that's not real. That's
Right.
like Donald Trump. That's what I've said to people before when I talk to Trump-a-fucks. You're just a fucking fanboy that's into the
Yeah.
vibe of a tough guy. That's all
Yeah.
you are because you have no substance. You don't know any of the policies. You don't know what law is. They don't care. And that's the problem we have in this country. We have such a high percentage of unserious unintelligent people in this country. It's terrifying to think that I could walk down the street and 30% or 40 of those percent aren't dumb enough, are too dumb to even have a fucking conversation with
Oh,
on anything.
well, absolutely. And isn't that why they're attacking the Department of Education? Of course it is, because that's what they want. Every ignorant, unintelligent person adds to their base if they can get them to vote. A lot of, I think it's overrated. I think a third of the people in the country didn't even vote. And
Yeah.
I hate to say it, a lot of the white women voted wrongly. They voted for Trump, and I still don't understand that one, but it's true. And I mean, I know there were many, many who did, but preponderantly they went for Trump, and that sucks, and it needs to change. But at the same time, they want to destroy the Department of Education so that and turn it back to the states, so the red states can effectively disenfranchise every student and say, you don't really need that. We've got private schools, we got charter schools. You just can go to one of them. But of course, you can't afford to go to one of them. So where the hell do you go? In large part, in the southern states in particular, the red states, the educational systems there are funded by Minnesota, California, New York. Our taxes are what support those schools, not theirs, because they don't tax. They don't have income tax. It's minimal on corporations. It's non existent on rich people. So the only money they get for the schools is federal money, quite frankly.
Right. Well, that's the interesting thing. When you look at who gets the most federal money for education, top five school or top five states are red. Arkansas, for example, gets like 23 or 24% of their funding from the federal government.
Yeah.
Minnesota gets maybe 7%. So what's going to happen when they shut down the department and all these things aren't going to be funded anymore? Uh, Minnesota will find a way to
Oh,
survive.
yeah.
California will probably survive. Alabama, South Dakota, Arkansas, they're going to have some real fucking problems. And maybe they don't care if their kids are educated.
They don't.
Based on their voting history, they aren't educated anyway. So that 20% is fucking wasted money.
Right. Well, the people of Tennessee keep returning Republicans to office. And in the last session of the legislature, they passed vouchers so that um, the people who send their kids to private schools essentially get the tax money that they pay to support schools back. And that takes money from the public schools, and the poor people can't afford to send their number one. There aren't enough private schools to accommodate even a maybe a fraction of those who attend public schools. They don't exist. And the charter schools are terrible, and there's too few of them also, even though they're terrible. So it effectively is going to not totally destroy in 1 year the public schools, but I happen to know that the public schools in my area are having roof problems on several of them that need to be fixed. If they don't have the money, then eventually that's just going to cause more and more problems. There'll be fewer teachers, there'll be bigger class sizes, transportation will suffer. It's going to hit the public schools hard. But they chose these people. They voted for them. And why did they vote for them? Because they want teachers to tell the kids that the earth is 6,000 years old and that Samson was a real dude. This is what they want. Take them to Sunday school, for God's sake, and leave the schools alone, you idiots.
I need to say this because you and I both work for a school district.
Yeah.
And we know for a fact there is a huge amount of waste. There
Yeah,
is a
and I can tell
huge
you where
amount of
it
waste.
is. It's top
I can
heavy.
tell you it is top heavy. Money comes in and it doesn't trickle down to the kids because, again, somebody's not doing the right thing. So there is waste to be found. The problem
Mhm.
is Donald Trump and Elon Musk are going in with a flamethrower. It's basically like having a garden and say, burn that fucker down so we can kill the weeds. That's
Yeah.
just stupid. They go in and they say, oh, he's finding all this waste. How could he find the waste? He put 2 days into going into the fucking place. These things are pretty complex. Find fucking waste. I'll support you there. But just by going in and tearing up a hotel room like a 70s fucking rock group, it's just ridiculous. You're showing that you're unserious. You're showing that you have no strategy and you don't care who gets hurt in the process.
Right, and if you look at it, before the election, the Heritage Foundation came out with Project 2025, where they laid out all of this, where you destroy all of these departments, or you fire everybody and then bring in your own people, whatever way they choose to do it. In effect, they're destroying the social safety net. That's what they had in mind, or anything that helps the common people. That was the goal. So they can talk about finding waste and fraud. Oh, sure, I'm sure there's a little bit of it. I'm sure there's somebody somewhere. Grandma died and they didn't bother to tell the government, so they're still getting her check. Maybe some of that. Okay. You do that by an individual, one at a time basis. And how do you do that? You make sure that you have enough people to do that. Like with the IRS, we know that when Biden went in and created more IRS agents, they collected huge amounts of taxes, primarily from corporations. Of course, they tried to spin it that the IRS was coming after you and your tips. No, it was the big companies they went after, and they clawed back all of this money. And now what are they doing? Getting rid of IRS agents so that that won't happen, and get rid of deregulation and get rid of all of that so they don't have to pay the fines when they pollute and so forth. Yeah, they're trying to destroy everything. They are not trying to find fraud and waste. They haven't found any. I mean, it's like 0.0001% of the federal budget is what they have found. And most of what they have found is a lie, by the way. But what they're claiming is like 0.0001% of the federal budget. So they're not
And the,
doing anything except making a lot of noise and firing a lot of people that we really need.
and the thing about it is if they found all this waste and this fraud, that came from tax money, right?
Yeah.
So when do I get my money back? The
Well, they
stuff
keep
that was stolen
promising
from me.
$5,000 or $6,000 check. Uh, what is that? I mean, if I'm on the street, yeah, 5 grand, 6 grand, that's something. I have to take that disbursement from my 401k every year, for God's sake. No, it's not going to do you a lot of good, and the harm is going to be so much more. For example, Social Security, what are they doing? Closing offices and firing people to help you process the claim. They claim now that they're going to make everybody go in and establish their identity. Well, if I live in East Tennessee and the nearest place that I go have to go to Nashville. How do I get there? Do I drive there? Do I take a bus? Bus doesn't even stop in my town anymore. It is simply so that they can deny earned benefits to people, and who knows where the money goes? Then spirit it away somewhere. It'll go in some oligarch's pocket. I guarantee you that. But this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to destroy the system from within, make it impossible to claim. And yes, I said earned. Fuck entitlements. It's earned benefits. I paid my money in, it grew. I want the return. What's so hard about that?
Yeah, oligarchs invest in things and they expect a return. We invested in things and we expect a return. I, we always talk about messaging with Democrats and Republicans and how Democrats are so bad at it. Um, I think we have to, in almost every conversation we have, because it's the one trigger point that bothers the most people. Anytime we talk, whether it be a TikTok or whether it be on mainstream media, we have to say they're going to take your Social Security, they're going to
Yeah,
take your Medicare, they're going to
yeah,
take your Medicaid, because the evidence is there that they want to do that. They've said they want to do that. And if that's going to be the one red line and the one trigger point for people to react to it, well, then we must do it. Everybody says, what can we do? Just keep telling people that they're going to take your Social Security, your Medicaid, and Medicare. It's not a lie, unlike what most Trumplafucks do when they're trying to carry the narrative. But we need to keep pushing this out there so people understand. I got to be out. We've talked about this before. I'm on Social Security. You're on Social Security. Now, if they took Social Security away from you and me, that would be tough. But we
yeah.
would survive. We would survive. We would live. We wouldn't be happy about it, but we'd be live. But I get so many calls and or people coming on lives and stuff like that, just terrified because
Absolutely.
that's all they have. If they don't have Social Security, they can't pay their rent. They can't eat. They can't get medicine. They can't get any of this stuff. The thing about it is we get Republicans coming out now getting bit in the ass and going, "Oh my God, I had no idea. I didn't know he meant this. You got to feel sorry for me." And these people that voted for Donald Trump that are feeling pain, I feel no empathy for, none. And I feel a distinct amount of disdain for them too. And some people say, I don't understand that. Why can't you just feel sorry for them? They're people too. Look, these fuckers fucked around and found out, and they're getting hurt. But in the process of what they were doing, they also hurt perfectly innocent people who did the right thing. So you're not only suffering now, you're still fucking villains.
Yeah, and look at who they're firing. I mean, a lot of these people are career employees. They've been working
Yeah.
at IRS or wherever for say 30 years, 25 years. You've put that much into this job. Now suddenly it's gone.
Right.
What do you do? You're 57 years old. You have certain physical limitations depending on where you live or something like that. Are there jobs available? Is there another job you can get? Well, can you retire and claim your Social Security? No, because they've closed the office and there's no way for you to go file a claim. So anything that makes things harder is what they're doing. They're trying to destroy these agencies that have been the lifeblood of America since the 1930s, really. Let's
Right.
say the 40s, because they really kicked in after the war. But the best time in America, if you were white, was during that period. And it was starting to be for other people too in the 60s. Then the malaise of the 70s came along, and then Ronald Reagan came in. Most evil man in the history of America. Donald Trump is still only number two, although he's working at it. But this is when it began. And we have to teach the real history. Yeah. The Gipper was an evil man,
Yeah.
period. Spread the word.
You know how this is proposed to play out by taking away Social Security. I saw it kind of play out in my own family when I was growing up. In the 70s, my grandparents worked. My grandmother worked at Honeywell. I believe she got a pension. My grandfather worked at Grainbelt Brewery. He was just a blue collar guy, bottling, whatever he was doing. He worked his ass off. And at the end, he was going to get a pension and, of course, a Social Security and survive as best he can off that. Before he retired, a guy that's well known in this part of the country, his name is Irwin Jacobs. They
Hmm.
called him Irwin the Liquidator.
Yeah.
He came into Greenbelt Brewery, bought it, told everybody, "Don't worry, I'm not liquidating Greenbelt Brewery. We're going to be fine. It's going to be fine." Short time after that, he liquidated it, and and then he pretty much wiped out all of their pensions. So
Yep.
here's my grandfather in his early 70s or late 60s, and he wants to retire. And he had planned for a pension after spending 35, 40 years working at this place. And this rich guy just comes out and wipes it all out, liquidates it. He's out of a job, takes away the pension, and then uh, then doesn't give a shit about anybody. That's what we're dealing with oligarchs. Now I do have a happy ending to this though. My grandfather died at about in his mid 70s of emphysema or something, and he was a wonderful guy. But he passed away, and my grandmother and he survived just fine on Social Security and my grandmother's pension and all that stuff. So they were fine. But it didn't end up so well for Irwin Jacobs. Irwin Jacobs' wife, I believe, got dementia, and he had some physical problems too. They're living in a big old house on Lake Minnetonka, probably about a mile from where I live. And this guy who lived his life ripping off people, becoming rich because of it, his life ended by him shooting his wife and him shooting himself. And you know what? I feel no empathy. Everybody goes, "Oh my
None.
God, it's so sad. It's so tragic." Fuck you. You deserve it.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And as you pointed out, what he was doing there is nothing any different than the private equity funds are doing now.
Right, right.
It's just that where it was one individual who had to accumulate a lot of money to buy these businesses and liquidate them and take the profit and screw people. Now it's groups of investors who do that. So people can have individually a lot less money, but when it's pooled together, then they can buy Joanne Fabrics, liquidate it, get rid of the inventory, sell the real estate, and of course they slowly bleed it. And I watched Sears die, and it broke my heart to watch. I'd go into Sears, I'd find anything I wanted practically, right? And then it started to be that sometimes they didn't have exactly what I wanted, and then they, instead of the guys who had been in these departments for 30 years, a career with Sears, running. I'd go in and I wanted a tool. Which one's best? The guy knew. He'd walk me to it. This is going to work for you. Just try it and explain how to do it. Well, pretty soon there was a teenage kid there who didn't even know how to run the register, right? And who took his place, who wasn't getting any sort of the compensation that he did, probably minimum wage or something.
Yeah.
And so there was nobody to help you, and the shelves were lean, and the floors were dirty, and eventually the whole thing collapsed, of course. And this was. I think that was a hedge fund, but
Yeah.
it's the same basic thing.
And the sad thing about Sears is I remember Sears very well when I was a kid because everybody would go to Sears. My dad would take me to Sears. You'd walk in, the first thing you smelled was the popcorn they made. They had popcorn there.
Yeah,
And the interesting thing about Sears, at least in my neighborhood, when the end of summer was coming and fall was approaching, you had to go get your school clothes. And
yeah,
you would always get your school clothes at Sears.
yeah,
The funny thing about it is everybody fucking did that. So you
yeah,
were like in a uniform. Everybody's wearing the same Sears clothes at your grade school because that's where they got their new clothes. It was quite a traditional place. It was a cool place to go because it did have everything. You could buy kids' clothes or fucking lawnmowers or wrenches or whatever, refrigerators and all that kind of stuff. And it's one of those places that it's sad to see that you don't see that anymore. I was talking to my brother. He lives down in Burnsville, southern part of the metro, and they
mhm,
have something called the Burnsville Center. You
Yeah.
walk into the Burnsville Center. I don't even know why they let you walk in anymore. There's nothing there. There is nothing there, and it was thriving. I think I even worked there for a time, managing some place. The only really mall that I know of, other than the Mall of America, which Minnesotans don't go to,
Yeah.
the only mall that's thriving in this community now seems to be Ridgedale, because you
Yeah.
can go there and there's still a pretty good crowd. But as much as the internet is at fault for closing all these retail outlets, I think you make a great point. These hedge funds are behind it as well.
Oh, absolutely. And that was Kmart. And then the guy who bought Kmart bought Sears, and he ran them both into the ground. Doing
Right.
exactly the same sort of thing, replacing staff with salaried employees who got commission with teenagers who got minimum wage and all of that stuff, and it eventually collapsed, both of them. The other thing about Sears was that they had a far-reaching impact by their mail order. See, my mom, we
Right.
didn't have a Sears. The nearest Sears to us was probably maybe Knoxville, 60, 80 miles away at that time. But she had that catalog, and she would start in April ordering our school clothes. And because you could pay on time. And she would send them $10, $20 a month, and then they would send the whole order right before school. Kind of a layaway plan, right? A lot of stores used to have that. But the other thing was, in my neck of the woods, there were stores where black people couldn't shop. They couldn't go
Right.
into the high end black. I mean, it just wasn't done. But nobody knew what they looked like at the post office. So, I mean, at Sears mail order. So they could shop and buy anything they wanted that they could afford from Sears without any trouble. And they did the same thing with J.C. Penney and Montgomery Ward's, two other stores that suffered essentially the same fate. And I assume Macy's probably is next. So at any rate, that is what is destroying businesses in this country. It's not that they can't compete with the stuff from China. It's because people know quality. I have a walking stick. It's a blackthorn walking stick from Ireland. I carry it because I can beat the crap out of anybody who gives me any trouble, or if there's a stray dog or something wants to interfere with my dog, I carry that. Well, my brother liked it, and he went on TiVo, is it Timu, and he
Emo.
saw Timu, and he saw one, and he ordered it for like, I paid like $100 for mine. He got his for like $29.95 or something. It's plastic. It looks like mine, but it ain't gonna do any damage.
He's got to get one of those that are about this long, and you
Yeah.
press a button and it turns into a 7 foot thing, and you just. I think Old Soul says that Wild Child has one of those for her own safety. You know the positive things I remember about the Sears catalog. Two positive things. Christmas time, you'd sit down as a kid, get some color crayons out, and you'd circle all the things you wanted
Yeah.
in the toy section. And then when you got to be 13, that was a time we didn't have the internet and porn wasn't as prevalent as it is today.
But they had
You'd
an
go to
underwear
that
section.
the ladies' underwear section. That was some hot shit when you're 13.
Yeah, of course, a lot of them looked like they were made by Goodyear, but those girdles and stuff back then, and may have
Well,
been for all I know. But yeah,
yeah,
my experience is the same as yours, and so is any other red-blooded American male.
I own it, man. I own it.
Yeah.
You know, Donald Trump said that he would stop the Russia-Ukraine war
Hmm.
within
A day.
24 hours
Yeah.
after being elected, not after taking the
No.
presidency. And now we're sitting with this thing, and I'm finding it really weird. Obviously, Donald Trump is siding with Vladimir Putin, which is outrageous when we talk about a country. Even back with Reagan, as horrible as he was, he hated the Russians. The Republicans hated the Russians, but now we seem to side with the Russians, and they're trying to shove this down Zelensky's throat. And when Donald Trump said that he could stop it in 24 hours, I think I understand what he was thinking. He thought, I'm big, powerful president of the big, powerful country of the United States. All I have to do is go to Zelensky and push my will on him and force him to give in to Vladimir Putin, and then Vlad can take over Ukraine. It's all over. It's good. I'm a fucking hero. I believe that's what he was thinking, but he's
Yeah,
finding out otherwise now. Things aren't going well. There is no ceasefire. I saw somebody on TikTok going, "Well, Donald Trump ended the war." And I go, "Well, no, he didn't. He didn't end the war because all they're really talking about now is not hitting the power plants. That's not a
except they
ceasefire."
have, you know.
They did right after they agreed to it.
Yeah, and
Surprise, you can't trust Vladimir Putin.
yeah, who knew? Yeah, well, this is the thing. I just saw John Bolton the other day says the problem is Trump is so fucking stupid. He thinks Vladimir Putin is his friend. He thinks Kim Jong Un is his friend. He thinks Erdogan is his friend. They recognize a stupid person when they see one, and yes, they're going to exploit them, but they ain't his friends.
He's a useful idiot, and the
Mm-hmm.
way you can know that's true is there was a TV program prior to when Vladimir Putin was to talk to Donald Trump, and he was on this TV program and said, "Hey, don't you have to get to?" And he laughed at Donald Trump, and he said,
Yeah,
"Ah, yeah, we'll get to him when we get to him." This is
yeah.
how Vladimir Putin treats Donald Trump, and it's interesting. Is it that he thinks they're buddies, or is it that he has something on Donald Trump? And a lot
Both
of people have talked
probably.
about that. James Carville, who we know, who is a
Yeah.
pundit of sorts, he said there's definitely a P tape or something of equal concern to Donald Trump. There's definitely something there. Now I don't know how he knows that or if he's just guessing, but when you look at the likes of Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, Vladimir Putin, that is the essence of their strategies, having something over on somebody and pressuring them to bend to their will or else. And that wouldn't surprise me at all that Vladimir Putin has it. Donald Trump is a dumb motherfucker. He's been to Russia. He's done some goofy fucking shit. And Vladimir Putin is a fairly crafty um, uh, a KGB agent. And that would be the smart thing to do to get something on this motherfucker to coerce him in some way. And then be lucky enough for him to become president. Fuck, that's the lottery.
Yeah, well, as I pointed out to you, I worked in before. I worked in military intelligence, and I had to. It took a year, and I was in language school for a year, and some other learning some other stuff too. But during that year, I was being investigated as thoroughly as you can be investigated. People that I barely knew told my mother, well, they were asking about Ed. Is he in trouble? And, no, he's in the Army. He's doing what? Oh, okay. So I got a top secret security clearance. And I had to go through that year to do that. But I learned by that experience that that is what we do as well. We try to get assets in other countries because we can do stuff remotely, which is what I did, but it's never as good, it's never as telling if you can get a national, a Russian national, or a North Korean or Chinese or whatever to turn and start giving you information. That's what you want to do. That's essentially what they did to Donald Trump way back in the 80s when he was having so much trouble financially. They started, he started letting him launder their money. For one thing, that alone should have been enough. If it had been revealed this guy was laundering Russian oligarch money, that should have been enough to keep him from ever being president because they had that over him. And I firmly believe that that is why the Justice Kennedy resigned abruptly because his son was involved with Deutsche Bank, which was the agency that was taking in the Russian money and then funneling it to Trump. I think there
Right.
was something going on there. I think Vladimir Putin had somebody call him up and said, if you don't want your son in prison, get your ass out of there. We need the seat.
It's interesting based on what we know, and that's what I've always said. He is an asset to Russia. He's a useful idiot. He's not a genius spy. But if Donald Trump had not run for the presidency, if he would have applied at the FBI to be an agent, they would have never let him in
No,
based on his history.
no. I don't know. He could have served in the armed forces. Period. Not that he ever would have, but You can be, or certainly not in any branch of the service where you were entrusted with any sort of secret that they didn't want out, which is most of them in one way or another. Speaking of Trump's brilliance, I had to. This was almost literal when he was selling cars on the front lawn of the White House the other day. He's talking about Tesla. He said, "Oh, Tesla's man. Oh, first the light bulb, now this." Like Tesla had anything to do with the damn Tesla cars. Well, yeah, he's like a modern day Isaac Neutron.
I love that. I love that. Did he mean
And this,
Jimmy Neutron?
I imagine he probably watches cartoons, don't you think?
I would think so.
Mm-hmm.
With some help.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, we laugh at this, but it's tragic that a man of this limited intellectual ability is our president.
Yeah. It's like taking the dumbest kid in your class and making him the class president. It makes no
Which I've
fucking
seen him
sense.
do. I have seen that
Yeah.
happen just for a joke. But
Now, now people will say, yeah, the Russia. You think he's a Russian asset? Why would they care about it in the '80s when they had no idea that he would ever be president? Well, he did have influence in the
yeah,
media. He had influence with money. He had influence with companies, and as you said, at the very least, he was a dupe to launder money. It
yeah,
was a great opportunity for them to launder money within the United States. So he
yeah,
was an asset then. And that's why I always get a kick out of him saying that the Russia thing in the Mueller report and how it was all a hoax. Fuck, his campaign manager got busted for consorting with Russia. Michael Flynn got busted for consorting with Russia. Donald Trump in his own fucking building in Trump Tower has Russians buying property in there.
yeah.
I
That's the
mean,
primary way they launder the money.
yeah. And
Hmm.
so and so they he has all these connections to Russia and he has the audacity to say, "Well, I have no connections to Russia." It's like the idea that he had no connections to Jeffrey Epstein. I think that's coming out now from some books and stuff that
Yeah,
they were best fucking friends. They
yeah.
were thick
I've
as
seen the
thieves.
videos. I've seen the videos with them laughing it up. Yeah. Uh, no, he's very definitely a Russian asset, and half the people around him are too, I believe. And a number of senators and Congress people as well are on that take. A lot of that money was funneled through the NRA, for example. We know that they had major contacts with Russia, and a lot of money went through the NRA to various. Whether it's Rand Paul or Ted Cruz, they're getting these donations from the NRA, but it's really from Russia.
Well, and you know, I think Democrats are under the misconception of something uh, leading up to this election on November 5th. They believe Republicans are bad and Democrats are good.
No,
Now, make no mistake that the Republicans are the worst of the worst. They're trying to overturn elections, undermine democracy, and overthrow the country. That's what they're trying to do. It's never been more apparent with what Elon is doing. But to suggest that the Democrats are the good guys and the Republicans are the bad guys, that's not true. We have a lot of Democrats uh, in Congress and in places all around the country that are just as bad. Well, I won't say maybe just as bad, but bad enough that they shouldn't be involved. We've basically got a handful of Democrats in Congress that I feel like I can believe in. But we're at a point right now where we have these town hall meetings. Republicans are getting lambasted, but even Democrats are getting shit now because they're tired of the weakness. The Chuck Schumer situation comes
yeah.
to mind. Um, we might be in for a turning point in politics in general in this country because nobody trusts fucking anybody.
And we probably shouldn't. Did you realize
No.
that they just raised their pay with that
Yeah.
when they stopped the country from defaulting what they signed on to, also raised their pay? That's something they always do, and that
Yeah.
the Democrats and the Republicans always vote for it. The other thing is, if it were up to me, everybody who's elected to Congress or the Senate, the first time they're you look at their financials from the year before, you see what their net worth is on the day that they set foot in Congress, and and then you track that every year, and you see how quickly they get rich. They go in with an annual worth of 300 grand, right? Or a
Right.
net worth of 300 grand. And in 4 years, suddenly they're in the $30 million range. And I'm talking Bobert, I'm talking Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm talking Matt Gaetz, I'm talking these people who come in there and they do this. I noticed they just got what was her name? She was one of the squad until she didn't get reelected. Brown, I
Are you talking
think is.
about? Yeah, yeah. I think it's. I was thinking Talib, but she did get reelected, didn't she?
Yeah, no, this was. I can't remember her name. Anyway, they just got her partner, her husband, whatever, for faking a PPP loan. The information he gave to get the PPP loan was fraudulent. Now that doesn't necessarily mean she knew about it. Who knows, right? But and Menendez, not Menendez. What's his name? Um,
Yeah, it's Robert
yeah, that's
Menendez.
right. Menendez. Yeah. I get him mixed up with the brothers who try and get out of jail. But yeah, I mean, he was obviously a crook. Yeah, there's plenty of Democrats who have problems too. And, they are susceptible to the machinations of lobbyists and people like that as well. They get the stock tips. That's how they get rich primarily. It's not like they hand him a gold bar like they did with Menendez very often, but there's
That was
many,
pretty
many
blatant.
ways. There's many, many ways you can get very, very rich very, very quick if you have access to the right information, and we know it happens. So no, but overall, democratic policies tend to favor the lower and middle classes to a degree. To a degree, not perfect, not by a long shot, but to a degree. I still think that money talks, and that they're outside of the squad, and people like her, Bernie Sanders, and the extreme left wing, if you want to call it the left wing, I call it the center, and everything else is to the right. When they talk about Democrats moving to the center, they really want to move to the right a little bit, right?
Right.
But or a lot, but anyway, yeah, there's troubles with both, and we tend to divide into these factions, and we go Democrat good, Republican bad. No, we have to say politician bad. Let's find the good ones and keep them. Let's get rid of the others.
That's why I always said it's not Democrat versus Republicans. It's us against them.
Yeah,
And the politicians have been caught up in the greed and the money too on both sides of the situation. They've gotten away with this all this time, and it's our fault because we become apathetic and complacent about it and just say let them do whatever they do. I think they all fucked up here because now all of a sudden everybody's engaged and everybody's
yeah,
under the microscope. I mean, take Gavin Newsom for example.
yes,
Gavin Newsom was the hot prospect for the 2028 presidential campaign. He had the right look. He said the right things. He's the governor of California. Then he decides he wants to make a little more money and do a podcast. And in doing that podcast, he wants to get viewers quick. So he brings in these Trumplafucks, Steve Bannon and such.
yeah,
And he fucks up. He fucks
yeah,
up. People hate Trumplafucks so much that if you don't go in there and kick their ass, you're the enemy. And that's
right.
what he did. He made that mistake.
Exactly. Right now, I think the front runner is probably the governor of Illinois. Now, who knows what lurks in his closet? We'll find out, I guess. But so far, he's saying the right words. Plus, he's a billionaire, so he doesn't have to worry about the money quite as much as others do. I don't trust billionaires, though. They got to be a billionaire some way, and usually it's not a good way.
I like JB Prisker. He says all the right things. He does all the right things. And he could be a front runner for the presidency in 2028. But I'm thinking it's somebody else. I'm thinking it's You may not believe me on this. I'm thinking
Wait,
it's Tim Walz.
that's what I was going to say. Tim is out there and he's going to the enemy. He's going to Iowa. He's going to where the Republicans live. And
What governor
that's,
does that? What
yeah,
governor does that unless they're looking for something else?
right, exactly. And he's making waves. He can speak. You know, what did I see the other day? The Republicans are trying to tie him to China somehow. How he's controlled by China. So you know he's making some good headway. Uh,
Well,
I thought I thought originally when he first was running for vice, um, or campaigning,
yeah,
letting it be
vice
known that
president.
he was, willing to do it. I thought then he's planning for the presidency. This is just the beginning, but we'll see. He would have my vote quickly because I do think that he works well within Minnesota. I think he comes from a fairly conservative district, and he was
Yeah.
able to do some really great things. I think his mind and his heart are in the right place, and I would definitely support him far more than I would Gavin Newsom.
Well,
But
Tim Walz.
Pritzker's still a good choice.
No, Pritzker is still a good choice. But Tim Walz, I'm looking at the situation, and what are the things we've learned through the elections that Donald Trump has won? Uh, People will vote against women. They will vote against women of color. So racism and sexism are a big deal. They also seem to not like establishment Democrats anymore. You
Yeah,
know, that's why the Republicans voted for Donald Trump. They were
yeah,
tired about the status quo, the way things were going. So they wanted somebody to shake it up. And Tim Walz, while he's not a wild lefty, he's more left of center. He fits the mold there to maybe appeal to all aspects, the far left and the center left people. But he's totally different than the establishment politician we're used to seeing. He's more down home. He'll
yeah,
tell jokes. He'll even go on and say, I bet I could kick most Trumplefuck's asses. And
yeah,
it just made their heads explode. I'm
yeah,
watching people on TikTok going fucking nuts.
yeah. Um, It's going to be interesting. I hope that we get a chance to vote. At this stage of the game, all our eggs are in the courts right now, is what it comes down to. It seems like the Democrats have capitulated in the House and Senate. Of course, they didn't really have a. They had to capitulate in the House because they didn't have the votes, but the in the Senate, Schumer, did the end run, got his 10 or 15, whatever it was, together to do that. Uh, I understand. I saw him on The View, so I listened to what he had to say, and he was basically saying that everybody loses if the government shuts down. May be true. And the way that the Democrats are not able to get out their message now because the Republicans own the media, the NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox, they pretty much own. So getting the message out is more difficult than it was. We don't seem to have influencers online in the same way that conservatives do. We don't have Joe Rogan, we don't have a Bongino, we don't have these very, very popular populist kind of communicators. I can't think of a single liberal equivalent. Rachel Maddow, to a certain extent, maybe. I can't think of any, though, that come close to those two.
Well, I will tell you this Midas Touch on online here
Yeah,
is now beating Joe Rogan
excellent.
in listeners. So that's a start.
Yeah,
That's a start. Um, I'm expecting at some point in the next 6 months I'll be beating Joe Rogan too. I'm kidding. That's not going to happen. But the point is it is happening and people are turning away from some of these people. I think that as I said, I think people are waking up. They've awakened a sleeping giant that's done nothing for all these years, and now that people are feeling the pinch and they are starting to be fearful of what's going on. I mean, this is part and parcel to what Republicans do. They always try to instill fear, but the kind of fear that they're instilling not only into their own party, but the Democrats, it's going to work against them. It's going to hurt them. They always push the envelope too far and then they get crushed. And I think ultimately that's what we're going to see here. The people will be too loud and too frightened and too angry, and they won't be able to control it.
I hope so, and I hope they replace Chuck Schumer as
Absolutely.
leadership. I think they need a younger, dynamic person who is willing to go to the mat and not do this, nibble at the edges kind of stuff. Because by passing, essentially, by keeping the government going, passing, the spending plan of the Republicans and so forth, they pretty much guarantee that Medicaid is going to be destroyed, because we know they want to cut $880 billion the from the program, or at least that would be the lion's share of where that money comes from, is from Medicaid. That means that rural hospitals will close, nursing homes will close, people will be thrown out on the street. And I'll tell you, when it comes down to you having to take in 4 elderly people into your 3-room apartment or let them die on the street, people are going to notice. When you got to move Granny and Grandpa and your Aunt Sally into your double wide, it's going to have an impact. And that's what we're looking at here.
What do you think? Do you think? What do you think it was Schumer? I didn't like Schumer before this whole
No,
CR
nor did
thing.
I.
I thought he was too weak then. But
I thought he
do you think?
carried Nancy Pelosi's purse primarily. That's what I thought. I've never been a fan.
Yeah, we could call him Cuck Chuck.
Yeah.
But I probably wouldn't do that on TikTok. But this is the podcast. So I'll say whatever the
Yeah.
fuck I want.
The thing is, I would take him 1,000 times over any Republican.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah.
still, I don't think he is the leader we need at the moment.
Do you think he gets booted out of there? Do you think he gets forced out of there?
I hope so. And
I do too.
it may happen at the midterms. I don't think, obviously, he was able to turn the tide and get done what he wanted to get done this time. I think there is going to be, if this sentiment keeps up, and I hope it does, and I hope it gets stronger, and I think it will, because they're going to keep trying to do what they're trying to do.
Right.
And for example, something we talked about briefly before is, purging the government websites of people of color and women and their accomplishments and so forth, and closing down the VA. They're already closing. They closed a big center in Nashville here and other places, and making it even more difficult for veterans to get health care and so forth. Think about how many veterans there are, and if they're not, and people who are the children of veterans, or they're the nephews of veterans, or they know somebody who is getting who. Um, uh, I know a person who had a brain tumor, and it would have meant that they were totally wiped out.
Right.
They wouldn't have had a pot, to do anything in, to cook or whatever. But because they had access to VA, they were able to get the operation they needed. They came through with flying colors, and it cost them almost nothing. So, yeah, that's going to have a huge impact when it comes to people are dying because they can't get care that they deserve, that they have earned, that they really, really deserve. So, even active duty people, think about that. You're seeing how they're treating veterans, and you're an active duty person. If you're an enlisted man, maybe you can't do anything. Maybe if you're an officer, maybe you're a general, and you're looking at these men that you're supposed to lead into battle, and you're thinking, what are they thinking? Are they going to do what I ask them to do when the time comes? I don't know if you remember in Vietnam, if the troops didn't like their lieutenant, he kind of disappeared. Enemy fire or friendly fire. There was fracking going on, or fragging going on
Bragging.
against
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
You know, um, at some point, the military is going to become involved in this. Now, I'm hoping we can settle things politically, but Liz Cheney the other day said this ends when the Joint Chiefs of Staff and SEAL Team 6 drive up Pennsylvania Avenue and get rid of the insurrectionist in the White House.
As somebody who was in the service, do you think that's even feasible? Do you think that could happen?
I know that in Russia, that was when things changed, when the troops who were fighting World War I against the Germans turned around and marched home. I know that's when the revolution became a success. When the crew of the battleship Potemkin rose up and joined the revolution, or started the revolution essentially, that is when things changed. Yeah, I think it could happen. Why not?
It would be ironic
Yes.
that we would end a coup by mounting a coup. That's
Yeah,
kind of what it would be.
it would be. Exactly.
It's a
And
sad state of affairs that
it
we have
is.
to consider that.
The other thing that I think the Republicans forget, and it's strange that they forget it because it was a talking point of theirs for years, that we'll never be invaded because we all have our Second Amendment rights, and all of, half the country, more than half the country has a gun, and half of them have more than one. So
Right.
if the tide turns, if public sentiment turns against the Republicans, I wouldn't want to be them.
No, no, it's going to get ugly. And that's my biggest fear, uh, that we're at a point now, like I said, we're in a precarious position that it may have to resort to violence in some way or another, whether it be a coup. And I certainly don't want to see that. I would just hope people do the right thing, Republicans particularly, but they're showing no signs of willingness to do that.
No, they aren't. I think well, it's like sharks smelling blood in the water. They think they've got this mandate, or at least they've claimed this mandate, and they're going after the federal government. They're trying to essentially destroy it and put all power back to the states because they think they can control enough of the state legislatures to do anything they want. They really want to destroy the federal government. That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. Well, Ed, I'm going to wrap things up. First, tell people where they can find you. I know a lot of people ask if they haven't found you by now, what the fuck are you doing? Ed's been around a long time, and we've told you and we told you. But tell them again so they can find you, and I encourage them to do that.
Well, the name I use is reeling in the years at Holler Troll on TikTok. But at Holler Troll will get you there. Let me just throw one. I just put a new one up dealing with DEI. And I tell the story of a young woman who I first encountered, a young black woman I first encountered as a waitress, the first black person hired in my hometown for any job other than the shoe shine guys the in the barber shops, and how she went on from there, saved her tips, and went to business school, and eventually wound up at a much better place than anybody had ever expected that she would be. It was still, she was the executive assistant for a plant manager. And people go, well, that's not so great. Well, when you consider what I just said, first black person ever to be hired in my hometown, other than a shoe shine guy, it's enormous. And
It
how
is.
all she needed was that opportunity, that first job, and then she was able to show her worth and move up. That's all DEI is: diversity, equity, inclusion, giving people the opportunity, not giving them something they don't deserve, giving them the opportunity to show what they can do. That's what DEI is. And if you want to hear that story, you can hear it right now. At Holler Troll, reel it in the years, at Holler Troll on TikTok.
I excuse me. I encourage you to check it out. It's always a good listen when Ed is telling a story. Great storyteller. I want to thank you for coming in today. It's always great to have you on the show. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.